Evan publicly denied our engagement on the campus forum, saying I used my family's power to force him to marry me. He put his arm around my best friend and announced his true love. The whole school mocked me for throwing myself at him. I turned around and asked my parents to dissolve the engagement and terminate all cooperation with his family. He hurried over, flustered, to explain that it was just a joke, and asked why I had to make such a big deal out of it. I smiled, opened my phone, and showed him the news about his family's stock price plummeting. Sorry, I said. I never joke about money. The next day, he was kneeling at my front door, begging me to forgive him, while my new boyfriend, the real power holder in the industry, was gently wrapping his arm around my shoulders. Baby, he said softly, if you want to buy out his family's corporation, I can help you round the number up. When my phone suddenly started vibrating non-stop, I was standing in front of the mirror, slowly applying a new lipstick I had just bought. It was the one Evan had given me. He told me the color suited me, that it made me look like what his future bride should look like. My roommate Lily suddenly grabbed my phone, her voice trembling so badly she could barely speak. Sierra, stop putting on makeup. Look at the forum, Evan, I blinked, tapped her hand, and took my phone back. On the NDU campus forum, the pinned post at the top had a bold red title: Evan Carter's clarification on the so-called engagement with Sierra Warren, and my official statement with my true love. Posted by Evan Carter. My heart felt as if something had gently squeezed it, not too hard, not too soft. Then everything inside fell into a cold, dead quiet. I opened the post. I am Evan Carter. Recently, rumors have been spreading around campus about an engagement between Miss Sierra Warren and me. I am clarifying this to avoid further misunderstanding. Miss Warren and I share nothing more than a long-standing connection between our families. There is no engagement. The so-called fiancé's rumor is entirely Miss Warren's one-sided misunderstanding and persistent clinging, which has caused serious disruption to my personal life. Feelings cannot be forced, nor should anyone be bound by so-called favors or family pressure. I have never acknowledged this engagement that originated from a joke among elders. At the same time, I would like to formally introduce my girlfriend, Anna Yune. We love each other sincerely and hope everyone will give us their blessings. Below the text was a photograph. In the photo, Evan tilted his head slightly toward the girl in his arms who was smiling sweetly. That girl was someone I had known for 10 years, someone I went shopping with, shared secrets with, and treated wholeheartedly. My best friend, Anna Yune. She leaned against Evan's chest, her smile sweet and piercing. The background was the corner of the cafe we always went to together. I had sat across from Evan countless times, with Anna sitting right beside me. The post had been up for 3 minutes, and the comments had already filled more than 10 pages. Holy crap, unbelievable. Sierra was actually the one throwing herself at him? I always felt she didn't deserve Evan. Using her family money to force a marriage? Gross. Poor Evan, imagine being chased by a woman like that. Anna is gentle and gorgeous, they're the real perfect match. The Warrens are rich, but this is shameless. Forcing a marriage like this? Disgusting. Sierra always looked cold, didn't think she was this cheap. Clinging to him like that? Yikes. Am I the only one who thinks Evan is being inconsiderate? If he didn't like her, he could have said so earlier, instead of humiliating her publicly. Shut up, Saint. Evan is bravely pursuing true love and breaking old-fashioned traditions. Support Evan and Anna. The cold light from the phone screen reflected on my face. Lily was stomping beside me, her voice shaking with anger and tears. How could he? And Anna? Lily's voice shook. How can he treat you like this? Sierra, say something. I set my phone down, picked up a wet wipe from the desk, and slowly wiped away the overly bright red lipstick on my lips bit by bit. The face in the mirror looked a little pale, but my eyes were calm like the surface of a frozen lake. What am I supposed to say? I finally spoke, my voice steady even to my own surprise. Say that Evan is ungrateful? Or that Anna is heartless and neither of them is worth anything? I picked up my phone again, ignoring the flood of private messages and friend requests pouring in, and directly dialed the number saved as Dad. He answered almost instantly. Hey, sweetheart, why are you calling at this hour? Are you out of allowance again? His cheerful voice carried its usual warmth and affection. I stared at my calm, expressionless reflection in the mirror and said clearly, "Dad, tell the Carter family the engagement is off. Immediately." There was a brief silence on the other end. Then my dad's voice dropped, stern and unquestionable. "Did that Carter boy bully you?" "Yes," I replied simply without giving further explanation. "Also, stop all cooperation with their family." "Understood," he said without hesitation. "I'll have your mom contact legal in the investment department right away. Don't worry." "Thanks, Dad." After hanging up, I sent my mom a short message. "Mom, take action." She replied even faster. "Got it. No one gets to bully my daughter." Once everything was done, I switched my phone to silent and tossed it onto the desk. Outside the dorm room, I could already hear the vague chatter, the laughter, the mockery, with no attempt to hide it. "Sierra, are you really okay?" Lily asked, her face full of worry. I stood up, opened my closet, and began packing my things. What could possibly be wrong? I pulled the corner of my lips upward, the curve cold. When you throw out trash, shouldn't you feel relieved? I didn't pay attention to the chaos exploding across the forum or answer a single phone call asking what happened. I drove straight home. The atmosphere at home was tense, but my parents didn't press me for explanations. My mom simply came forward and hugged me, gently patting my back. "It's okay. You're home now. I made the soup you like. It's simmering in the kitchen." My dad sat on the sofa, typing rapidly on his laptop, brows tightly furrowed as he handled documents. I knew that the massive machine that was the Warren Group had already begun to move, efficiently and ruthlessly, against the Carter family, their former partner, because of the single phone call I made. By evening, Evan finally called. I stared at his name flashing on the screen and waited until it was about to time out before answering slowly and putting it on speaker. "Sierra Warren," Evan said, his voice filled with suppressed anger and impatience. "What kind of tantrum are you throwing now? You saw the forum post, didn't you? I've been meaning to tell you, there's no way we could ever—" I saw it, I cut him off, my voice calm and flat. "So?" He was clearly stunned for a moment, then grew even more irritated. So tell your parents to stop? Canceling the engagement? Cutting off cooperation? Sierra, do you even know what you're doing? Just because I made my relationship with Anna public, you choose to retaliate like this? How childish can you be? Retaliate? I let out a quiet laugh. "Evan, you think too highly of yourself. I simply don't want my family tied to a company with someone who doesn't keep his word and lacks basic integrity. The Warren family's money doesn't blow in from the wind." He breathed heavily on the other end, clearly furious. "You, fine, very fine." "Sierra Warren, you really insist on doing this?" Evan snapped. "Do you think this will force me to come crawling back? I'm telling you, impossible. The one I love is Anna Una, only her." "I see," I replied lightly. "Then I wish you two, a bitch and a dog, a long and happy life together." Evan had probably never heard me speak like that. He froze for a moment, silent, before finally finding his voice again, sounding as if he were granting me charity. "Sierra, I know you're acting like this because you like me too much. It's hate born from love. Just ask your parents to take back their decision, explain that it was all a misunderstanding, and make an official statement. As for what happened on the forum, Anna and I can choose not to hold your previous clinginess against you. We can still be friends." I almost laughed out loud. Where did he get this level of confidence? Some kind of divine gift. "Evan," I said slowly, staring at the night settling outside the window, "do you really think I can't live without you? Do you think that no matter what you do, no matter how you trample on my feelings, I will always stay right where I am and wait for you because of that so-called love? Isn't that the case?" he asked, sounding completely justified. I hung up on him immediately and blocked his number. I had no interest in listening to another word of useless nonsense. The next morning, I was woken by noise coming from outside. I pulled open the curtains and saw Evan and his father, who was also sweating anxiously, being blocked by security at the gate of our villa. His father kept making calls, his face dark as iron. Evan looked irritated, restless, and kept staring toward the main house with unwilling eyes. After washing up and getting dressed, I walked down the stairs at a leisurely pace. My mom was having breakfast gracefully in the dining room. When she saw me, she smiled. "You're awake. There are 2 flies outside. Did they disturb you?" I shook my head and sat at the table. The housekeeper approached quietly. Sir, ma'am, Miss Warren, Mr. Carter and young Mr. Carter insist on seeing you. They say there's a misunderstanding they want to explain. My dad put down his tablet and wiped his mouth. Let them in. The Carter father and son practically rushed into the room. Mr. Carter immediately plastered on a smile, more humble than I had ever seen. Mr. Warren, Mrs. Warren, Sierra, what? What is going on? Why are we suddenly terminating the partnership? Did Evan do something wrong? If he upset Sierra, well, young people argue it's nothing serious. Just talk it out. Why affect the relationship and business between our families? Evan stood behind his father, staring at me with bloodshot eyes, anger, confusion, and a hint of panic all mixed together. He quickly spoke up, still using the habitual accusatory tone but clearly lacking the confidence he usually had. Sierra, just because I didn't go along with what you wanted, you encouraged Uncle Warren and Aunt Warren to do this? Do you know you could ruin my family? You're being way too childish. I picked up my glass of milk, took a sip, and didn't bother looking at him. My dad lifted his eyelids slightly and glanced at Evan. Just one glance, cold and heavy, and Evan immediately fell silent, like someone had struck him. My dad's voice wasn't loud, but it carried the oppressive weight of someone who had been in power for a long time. The clarification statement on the forum yesterday was quite something. You said the engagement existed only because Sierra clung to you? That it was her own misunderstanding? Mr. Carter's face went pale. He shot a furious glare at Evan before quickly forcing a smile. Mr. Warren, that was just a childish mistake. The engagement was something our two families agreed on long ago. How can we just cancel it? Evan was simply being foolish for a moment. Mr. Carter gritted his teeth. He was just blinded by that woman, Anna Yoon. Once I take him home, I'll teach him a good lesson. He's been foolish. My mom gently set down her knife and fork, the crisp sound ringing lightly through the room. Foolish? She asked. He looked very clear-headed to me. He denied the engagement in front of the entire school, declared his true love, and where exactly does that leave our Sierra? Where does that leave the Warren family's dignity? She turned to Evan, her gaze sharp. Evan Carter, didn't you swear on the phone yesterday that you only loved that Anna Yoon? That Sierra should stop bothering you? So what happened? It's only been one night. Your family's stock dropped 30%, and suddenly you understand fear? Evan's face turned ghostly pale. Clearly, he had never imagined things would deteriorate so drastically overnight. He snapped his head toward me, his voice trembling. Sierra, even if I said something harsh yesterday, that was between the two of us. Why would you use your family's influence to crush ours? Do you really hate me that much? I finally looked at him directly. He stood there completely disheveled, desperately trying to hold on to the last shred of pride he had. Inside me, the frozen lake didn't ripple, not even a crack. I picked up my phone from the table, opened the financial news notifications, and turned the screen toward him. The bold headline read, Warren Group announces termination of multiple core partnerships with Carter Corp. Carter stock plummets at market open. Capital chain faces severe risk of collapse. Hate you? I tilted my head slightly, curling my lips into a smile devoid of warmth. Evan Carter, you've misunderstood. I simply don't joke about money. Your family's credibility collapsed last night because of your wonderful little performance. Continuing to work with the Carters is too risky. I'm just cutting losses in time. Understand? Evan stared at the screen, then at me, his pupils contracting violently as if he was seeing me for the first time in his life. He opened his mouth trying to speak, but not a single word came out. It was the expression of someone whose entire worldview had just collapsed. He had probably always believed that my feelings for him were unconditional, a resource he could squander however he liked. It was only now he finally realized. Once those feelings were withdrawn, the price he had to pay was something he could never bear. And no, it's not like that, he murmured, his body swaying as if he could barely stand. His father looked ashen, wanting to say something more, but my dad had already risen to his feet and issued a cold, final order. Mr. Carter, please leave. Our legal department will follow up on the contract termination. As for the fate of your Carter Corporation, it is no longer any concern of the Warren family. Security stepped forward without hesitation, escorting the stunned Carter father and son out of the house. I could hear Evan's broken shouting faintly from outside, but soon even that was cut off. Peace returned. My mom placed an extra dessert on my plate and said lightly, "Try this, it's from the new chef." I took a bite, sweet but not overly so. It's good. When I returned to campus, the atmosphere was noticeably different. The people who had attacked me so viciously on the forum the day before now looked at me with a mix of emotions, curiosity, fear, guilt, and disbelief. They whispered as I walked by, eyes following me everywhere. Whispers of fear and poorly hidden embarrassment followed me wherever I walked. News of the Warren Group's decisive strike against the Carter family had clearly spread throughout the school. Capital had always been like this, swift, direct, and capable of overturning public opinion in an instant. I had barely sat down in the classroom when Anna Uni walked toward me. Her eyes were swollen, as if she had cried all night, and she stood in front of me with a pitiful expression, her voice choked. "Sierra, I'm sorry. I really didn't expect things to turn out like this. Evan and I truly love each other. We never wanted to hurt you." I lifted my eyes to look at her without speaking. My silence seemed to make her uneasy. She subconsciously stepped back half a step, but still insisted. But even if we were wrong, you can't do this to the Carter family. Evan, he's someone you used to like. How can you be so heartless?" "Heartless?" I repeated the word, finding it almost funny. Several classmates around us were already eavesdropping. I stood up, looking down at her. The face I once found warm and familiar now looked nothing but fake. "Tell me, Anna," I said evenly. "Are the things you stole from me still convenient to use?" Her face flushed bright red instantly. "What do you mean?" "What do I mean?" My tone was indifferent, but every word was clear. "The bag I gave you, the membership card I paid for. And after all that, you went behind my back and climbed into my fiancé's bed, and now you want to lecture me about feelings?" I took one step forward, forcing her to retreat. "Your true love is awfully cheap." A few people nearby couldn't suppress their snickers. Anna's face turned from red to white, her lips trembling as tears streamed down even harder, but she couldn't form a single coherent sentence. "Sierra, that's enough." A figure rushed over and pulled Anna protectively behind him. Evan. He looked even worse than yesterday, stubble growing along his jaw, bloodshot eyes, exhaustion and fury tangled together. The way he looked at me was full of resentment and a desperate kind of madness. "Everything that happened was my doing," he growled. "If you have a problem, take it out on me." Bullying Anna, what kind of ability is that? I looked at the miserable lovebirds clinging to each other and felt nothing but irony. "Take it out on you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that exactly what I'm doing? Are you satisfied with the state of your precious Carter Corporation right now?" I added with a light, almost casual tone. Evan's breathing hitched, the color drained from his face even further. His fists clenched so tightly his knuckles trembled. It looked like he needed every ounce of strength in his body just to force out the words between his teeth. "Sierra Warren, what do you want? What will make you stop? Do you want me to get on my knees and beg you?" The classroom fell completely silent. Everyone held their breath. I looked at him for a few seconds, then I smiled. "Kneel?" I shook my head slowly, my tone carrying a hint of pity. "Evan, you still don't understand. I'm not negotiating with you. I'm informing you of the ending." With that, I ignored both of them, picked up my books, and walked to an empty seat at the back of the classroom. Behind me, I could hear Evan's ragged breathing, Anna's muffled sobs, and countless unreadable gazes. The collapse of the Carter family happened much faster than anyone expected. Without the Warren Group, their old tree of support, and without the credibility that association had provided them, the already unstable Carter Corporation fell like the first domino. Their stock continued to plummet. The banks began demanding loan repayments. Contracts were terminated one after another. Projects came to a halt. In less than a week, news of Carter Corporation filing for bankruptcy protection dominated the headlines of every local financial page. The once glorious young master, Evan Carter, had fallen completely from the clouds. He stopped coming to school. Rumor had it that, to pay off their debts, the Carter family had mortgaged both their villa and their cars, and the whole family had moved into an old, shabby apartment on the outskirts of the city. The sentiment on the forum had completely reversed. Those who once praised Evan and stepped on me now turned around and cursed Evan and Anna as if they were filth. Serves him right, living off a woman and still daring to publicly humiliate his sponsor. How did Evan even get into NDU with that brain? And Anna's disgusting too. A mistress who somehow thought she was special. Look at her now. See? Never underestimate a rich girl. Wait, no, never underestimate the rich girl. Miss Warren is amazing. I said from the beginning, Sierra wasn't that kind of person. You all just wouldn't listen. Oh, please. Anyone can pretend to be wise after the fact. I read all of it, but inside, I felt nothing. The warmth and cruelty of the world were nothing new to me. The next time I saw Evan was outside a top-tier members-only restaurant I frequented. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt, his hair a mess, and he was being blocked by the restaurant manager and 2 security guards. His face was flushed red as he argued. I used to be a regular here. What right do you have to keep me out? Apologies, Mr. Carter, the manager said with a perfectly professional, utterly emotionless smile. Your membership has been frozen. Furthermore, our establishment has a dress code. We do not admit anyone who is improperly dressed. Improperly dressed? Evan looked down at himself. The words struck him like a slap. He jerked his head up, just in time to see me stepping out of the car. His expression tightened, filled with humiliation, unwillingness, and for reasons that baffled me, a faint glimmer of hope. I was wearing a custom couture set from the new season, carrying a 7-figure Himalayan bag. I walked past him with steady steps, not sparing him even the corner of my eye. Sierra? He rasped, calling after me. I didn't stop. He suddenly broke away from the security guards and rushed in front of me, blocking my path. Up close, I could smell the faint mix of smoke and alcohol clinging to him, an aura of decay. Sierra, no, Miss Warren, he corrected himself quickly, his voice trembling with a pleading tone. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. It was Anna. She was the cheap one who seduced me first. I was confused. Please. For the sake of what we had before, let the Carter family go. Please. He reached out as if to grab my arm, but my bodyguard stepped forward expressionlessly and blocked him. Only then did I pause and tilt my head slightly, letting the sunlight fall across his pathetic, pleading face. For the sake of what we had? I repeated, as if he had just told me the funniest joke in the world. Evan, is there even such a thing between us? There is. There definitely is, he said frantically, his words tangled with desperation. You cared about me so much before. I was the bastard, I was blind. If you're willing to help me, I'll do anything. I can go back to you. I'll break up with Anna right now. I slowly turned fully toward him, looking him directly in the eyes. A faint light flickered in Evan's eyes, as if he had grabbed hold of his last lifeline. I looked at him for a full 5 seconds, then let out a soft laugh. Evan Carter, I said quietly, my voice calm but sharp like a blade breaking through ice. What makes you think I, Sierra Warren, would pick up trash someone else has already played with? And worse, trash that isn't even worth being called trash. The color drained from his face instantly. His lips trembled, and the light in his eyes went out completely, leaving only a dead, gray emptiness behind. I didn't look at him again. I gave the manager a small nod. Miss Warren, he said immediately, bowing slightly, your table is ready. Please come in. I stepped into the brightly lit restaurant, leaving Evan's shattered figure completely outside the heavy doors. Behind me, I heard his broken, guttural cry, only for it to be swallowed almost instantly by the restaurant's thick walls. Anna Uni fared no better than Evan. She tried to salvage her reputation by posting long emotional essays on social media, hinting that I was abusing my power and separating true love. But public opinion was no longer on her side. The comments were filled with mockery and contempt. A mistress trying to play the victim now? Her true love was Evan's money, right? He's broke now. Does she still love him? Herder bags and makeup were all gifts from Sierra Warren. Living off someone else while stabbing them in the back. Disgusting. And to make things worse, an anonymous user on the forum exposed piles of dirt on Anna. Multiple men she kept as backups. Expensive gifts she accepted. Even a record of cheating on an exam. True or false, all of it mixed together and tore apart the last bit of her fake facade. On campus, she became a rat everyone wanted to avoid. The group of girlfriends who used to cling to her disappeared instantly. No matter where she went, people pointed and whispered. She tried to find me, blocking me downstairs from my dorm. "Sierra, please listen to me, let me explain," she cried, tears streaming down her face like a fragile porcelain doll. She tried to perform the same tricks as before. I simply had my bodyguard escort her away. "Miss Uni," I said coldly, "if you show up in front of me again, I won't mind having my lawyer talk to you about the gifts you accepted. Their value is more than enough for a criminal case." Her face turned snow-white with fear, and she never dared approach me again. Later, I heard that because she was mentally unstable, she cheated during an important professional exam and was caught. The school issued severe disciplinary action. Her family was ordinary. She had hoped to climb up in life with her looks and degree. But now, her future was completely ruined. They said she applied for academic suspension and disappeared without a trace. That was the price she paid for betraying me and clinging to Evan. I thought everything was finally over, until I saw Evan's father at a top-tier business banquet. He looked like he had aged 20 years overnight. Half his hair had turned white. His suit was poorly fitted, and he walked around with a glass in his hand, forcing smiles at every powerful businessman, trying desperately to find a way to save his family's dying company. But most people ignored him. The few who stopped wore expressions of pity or ridicule before shaking their heads and walking away. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, as if he had seen his last hope. He stumbled through the crowd toward me. "Sierra, Sierra, my dear," he said in a hoarse voice, then corrected himself in desperate humility. "Miss Warren, please speak to Mr. Warren, just once. Beg him to help the Carter family, even just a little. Help us convince the bank to ease up. Carter Corp has been the work of several generations. It can't end like this." As he spoke, his eyes reddened. Around us, people were already beginning to notice. People nearby were watching with thinly veiled amusement, as if waiting for the next scene of a drama. I held my champagne glass, letting my fingertips lightly trace the rim, and said nothing. At that moment, a deep, smooth voice, carrying a commanding authority that allowed no questioning, sounded right beside me. "What's wrong, baby? Someone bothering you?" I turned my head. A tall man in a dark, custom-fitted suit had somehow appeared at my side without me noticing. His features were striking, his expression calm and unreadable, and his entire presence radiated a cold, aristocratic elegance, one that came from being in positions of power for a very long time. His appearance instantly drew every pair of eyes in the room. He was Julian Ford, the real power behind the Ford conglomerate, heir to an empire, and a man even my father treated with respect. I was surprised he would approach me on his own, more surprised by the intimate word "baby," spoken in that confident, natural tone. Without hesitation, he reached out and placed a hand around my shoulder, his gesture both intimate and quietly protective. Only then did he shift his gaze toward the man standing pale and frozen in front of us, Evan's father. "This is?" Julian asked, his tone distant and assessing, as if examining something beneath him. Under Julian's gaze, Mr. Carter didn't even dare breathe loudly. Cold sweat broke out instantly on his forehead. I gave a small smile and leaned slightly into Julian's side. "No one important," I said lightly. Julian nodded, not sparing Mr. Carter even a second glance. To him, the man truly was nothing more than dust in the air. Then he looked down at me, and in an instant, his eyes softened, filled with warmth and something close to indulgence. "Tired? Want to step out to the terrace for some air?" "Sure." He placed his hand on my back, guiding me away as if no one else existed. He never once looked at Mr. Carter again, leaving the man standing there with a face drained of all color, as if his soul had been pulled out of him. I could feel the desperate, hateful gaze burning into my back, but my heart, wrapped securely beneath Julian's palm, felt enveloped by a powerful, unfamiliar warmth. A calm, steady comfort settled inside me. After a few steps, Julian's low voice sounded at my ear, carrying a faint hint of amusement. "Is the acquisition of what's left of the Carter assets going smoothly? If you want, I can help you round it up. Make sure they disappear completely." A shock rippled through my chest. I looked up at him. In his deep, dark eyes, I saw the shimmering reflection of the crystal chandeliers, and my own reflection as well. In that moment, I knew. The Carter family, Evan, and every humiliation they had ever brought me would be crushed to dust without leaving a single trace behind. Julian's words were like a stone dropped into a frozen lake, sending quiet ripples through the depths of my heart. Round it up, make the entire Carter family disappear. From his lips it sounded effortless, casual, yet filled with absolute force. I lifted my eyes, trying to read something deeper in his gaze. Was it just gentlemanly politeness, or something with more intention behind it? "Mr. Ford jokes," I said softly, taking half a step back to place a polite, proper distance between us. The warmth of his hand left my shoulder. "It's just a small matter. I wouldn't dare trouble you with it." His lips curved into the faintest smile, not offended in the slightest by my pulling away. Instead, he picked up a new glass of champagne from a passing waiter, replacing the untouched one I'd been holding. "No need to be so formal, Miss Warren," he said, his voice low and rich, carrying a metallic kind of magnetism. "I just don't like seeing annoying things wandering around in front of you." The words were far too ambiguous, and the nearby glances grew even hotter, curiosity, envy, and speculation flaring in their eyes. Julian Ford had never once appeared publicly with a female companion, let alone acted so openly protective. I accepted the champagne he handed me. Our fingers brushed briefly, cool, fleeting. Then, "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Ford," I murmured, lowering my eyelashes as I took a small sip. The cool liquid slid down my throat, suppressing that strange flutter in my chest. 3 days after the banquet, the news of Carter Corporation's bankruptcy liquidation made it to the front page of every financial paper. It happened faster and more thoroughly than anyone had predicted. Capital under Fortis Holdings moved in with thunderous precision, swallowing every last valuable core asset the Carters had left. Not even scraps remained. Rumor had it that Evan's father couldn't withstand the blow. He had a heart attack and was hospitalized. As for Evan himself, he vanished completely. Some said he couldn't handle the fall from grace and left the city. Others whispered he tried to create trouble for Julian Ford and ended up with a miserable fate. No one dared verify the rumors. Julian Ford's name became the most feared shadow behind the downfall. I sat in my office, reading the news on my tablet with a calm, steady heart. My phone vibrated. It was an unfamiliar number. I swiped to answer. "Sierra Warren." Evan's voice came through, raspy and deranged, dripping with the madness of a man backed into a dead end. "It was you. You and Julian Ford destroyed my family. You poisonous woman, you'll die a horrible death." I leaned back in my chair, my tone indifferent. "Evan, you're the one who chose this path." "Chose what?" he screamed, losing control. "I just didn't play along with the Warren family's script. I didn't crawl at your feet like a dog, and this is how you retaliate? This is your revenge?" "Revenge?" I let out a soft laugh. "You think too highly of yourself. Crushing an ant doesn't require the word revenge." All I could hear on the other side was his ragged breathing, like the pitiful howl of a trapped animal. "Sierra, you'll regret this." I swear, I had no interest in hearing another word. I hung up and blocked the number. Regret? In my vocabulary, those two words never existed. Julian Ford began appearing in my life frequently after that, sending flowers to my company, inviting me to dinner, and even becoming my partner at a charity gala where he was the main sponsor. His pursuit was bold, straightforward, and carried an irresistible sense of dominance. Rumors exploded everywhere. People said the heiress of the Warren family had dumped her bankrupt fiancé and immediately climbed the highest branch in the elite circle. They accused me of scheming, of using my looks to rise. Every kind of ugly speculation circulated. I ignored all of it. Julian, however, did not. During a public interview at a business forum, a reporter brought up the rumors. Julian looked into the camera, his face stern, his eyes sharp like blades. "When I, Julian Ford, admire someone, I don't owe anyone an explanation," he said. He paused. Though his voice wasn't loud, it spread through the entire venue and through every broadcast screen. And those wagging their tongues would do well to consider whether their tongues are strong enough to withstand the consequences. The room fell completely silent. From that moment on, all public criticism disappeared without a trace. In private, I asked him, "Mr. Ford, why did you say something like that for my sake?" He was cutting my steak with elegant, effortless movements. Hearing my question, he lifted his gaze toward me, his eyes deep and unreadable. I protect what's mine, he said, each of the 3 words landing with absolute certainty. My heart skipped a beat, completely outside my control. My relationship with Julian Ford, in everyone else's eyes, was already a settled fact. He took me to meet his friends, every one of them wealthy or influential, and they treated me with courtesy, even with a faint, unmistakable respect. I knew that respect wasn't for me. It was for the man standing beside me. At a private equestrian club gathering, I sat in the lounge wearing riding clothes, sipping coffee. 2 elegantly dressed socialites walked over, speaking warmly but with obvious curiosity beneath their smiles. "Miss Warren, you're truly fortunate to earn Mr. Ford's affection." "That's right. We heard Mr. Ford completely destroyed the Carter family because of you." I set down the coffee cup and lifted my eyes to look at them. My expression was calm, unreadable. The 2 ladies stiffened under my gaze, their smiles faltering. "Carter family?" I said lightly. "I don't remember." Their faces changed slightly. They exchanged a quick look, then excused themselves and left hurriedly. I didn't know when Julian had arrived, but he sat down beside me, draping one arm naturally over the back of my chair. "Not a fan of these social events?" he asked. "It's not about liking or not liking," I said, watching the horses galloping across the field. "I just find them boring." He chuckled softly, his breath brushing past my ear. "Then we won't come again." His indulgence was barely concealed. But deep down I understood. Between us, there was something like an invisible barrier. His protectiveness, his kindness. Maybe some of it was interest, some admiration, but not merely simple affection. He was looking through me at something else, measuring something. The answer revealed itself quickly. At the Fortis Group's anniversary gala, an event filled with politicians, business elites, and every name that mattered, Julian attended with me on his arm, announcing my status to the world. Halfway through the banquet, he led me toward an elderly man with a commanding presence, a man whose authority needed no display. He was the pillar of the Ford family, the true master of the Ford empire, Julian's grandfather, Mr. Ford Sr., grandfather, Julian said respectfully. "This is Sierra." My heart tightened. I knew this was the real test. Mr. Ford's sharp gaze landed on me, piercing as if he could see through flesh into my soul. I steadied my breathing and bowed my head slightly, neither humble nor arrogant. "Good evening, Mr. Ford." He looked at me for a few seconds, expressionless, then asked simply, "The Warren family's daughter?" "Yes, sir." He withdrew his gaze and turned to Julian. "Good vision." Just that one sentence, nothing more. Julian's lips curved slightly, and the arm around my waist tightened. I understood then that I had passed the test, but not because I was Sierra Warren. I passed because I was the Warren family's Sierra Warren. A perfect match, a powerful alliance. That was the rule their world valued most. After the banquet ended, sitting in the car on the way back to the city, Julian Ford had his eyes closed, resting. The neon lights outside the window flickered across his face, casting shifting shadows along his perfect profile. I watched him for a moment before suddenly asking, "Mr. Ford, do we need a marriage alliance between us?" He slowly opened his eyes. In the dim light, his deep gaze revealed no emotion. "What do you think?" He returned the question to me. "I don't think we need one." I met his eyes, my tone steady and firm. "The Warren family doesn't need a marriage alliance to strengthen our status, and I, Sierra Warren, don't need it either." He studied me silently for a few seconds. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Not the polite, distant kind he used with strangers, but a genuine smile, warm and faintly amused, carrying a hint of appreciation and relief. "Good," he said. "Then I can focus on pursuing you properly." The car glided smoothly along the road. A strange, quiet stillness settled between us, something subtle shifting in the air. Just as I thought my life was about to settle into a new rhythm, an unexpected visitor shattered the calm. Evan's mother. Somehow she found her way to the front of my apartment building. She looked frail and worn, and with a thud she dropped to her knees in front of me, clutching my leg as she wailed uncontrollably. "Sierra, Miss Warren, please save Evan. He won't make it." I frowned slightly and signaled my bodyguards to pull her away. "Mrs. Carter, what are you doing?" She collapsed onto the ground, sobbing so hard she couldn't form sentences. "It was Julian Ford. He sent people to break Evan's legs and dumped him in an abandoned factory outside the city. The doctor said if we found him any later, his leg would have been lost. He's still in the hospital, but we don't have money to pay the bills. They're threatening to kick him out." She cried so hard she could barely breathe. "I know Evan wronged you. Everything was our fault, but he once truly loved you, didn't he? Please, I'm begging you, give him a chance to live. Please." I stood there as the night breeze tugged at the hem of my coat, carrying a cold sting through the air. Julian had made his move. Much harsher, much more ruthless than I had expected. And it wasn't for me, not exactly. This was a demonstration of power. A warning, clearing obstacles with brutal efficiency. He was telling everyone what happened to those who touched someone he had marked as his. Evan had become the sacrificial warning. I looked at the woman who had once lived in luxury and now knelt in the dust with nothing left, not even dignity. I felt no sympathy, no pleasure, only a vast, cold emptiness. "Mrs. Carter," I said, my voice crisp and clear in the night air, "Evan and I settled our scores long ago. His life or death has nothing to do with me." I turned and walked into the apartment building. Behind me, under the bright lobby lights, her desperate screams tore through the air, then were cut off as the doors closed. The world really was this cruel. Once you lose your value, once you fall, even your cries become unnecessary. I didn't tell Julian about what happened. He didn't seem to know Evan's parents had come to me, or if he did know, he didn't care. Our lives continued as usual. He kept inserting himself into my world with that unshakable dominance, sending expensive gifts, taking me to events, placing me firmly under his wing. Rumors about our impending engagement grew louder and louder. Even my parents called, subtly hinting at the topic. "I know what I'm doing," was all I answered before hanging up. I stared at the glittering night city outside my window, and for the first time, a faint sense of confusion washed over me. Julian Ford was perfect, powerful, handsome, protective. He checked every box of what society would call an ideal partner. But being with him, I always felt like a carefully curated trophy he kept, or a polished label that matched his status. Something real between us was missing. Until that day, I accidentally saw a document in his study. I hadn't meant to look, I'd only gone to call him for dinner, and the file was already open on his desk. It was a detailed assessment report on the Warren Group's core projects over the last 3 years. The level of detail was almost frightening. Next to several key projects' potential risk columns, I saw familiar, sharp handwritten notes, his handwriting. One of the notes pointed to an overseas mining investment my father had overseen years ago. Next to it, he wrote, "Intervention possible when timing is right." For a moment, I felt my blood turn to ice. "Finished reading?" Julian's voice came from behind me, calm and steady. I spun around sharply. He was leaning against the doorframe, hands casually in his pockets, looking at me with an unreadable expression. "What is this supposed to mean?" I pointed at the document, my voice tightening. He walked over and closed the file with composed ease. "A business evaluation, that's all." He lifted his eyes to mine, deep and steady. "Fortis always does this level of preparation before considering any high-potential project." "Potential," I repeated, locking my gaze on him. "Or weaknesses?" He raised an eyebrow slightly. "Sometimes in business, those two things are the same." My heart sank, slowly and heavily. So he approached me, not just because I was Sierra Warren, but because I was the Warren Group's heiress. He had been assessing the value of my family, analyzing the right moment to intervene. His pursuit, the idea of a marriage alliance, they might all have been moves on his corporate chessboard. "So tell me," I said, my own voice cold and eerily steady, "how much of what you feel for me is real?" Julian held my gaze in silence. The only sound in the study was our breathing. The night outside was dark as ink. He stepped toward me, his tall frame radiating an undeniable pressure. "Sierra," he said quietly, "with my position and influence, if all I wanted was access to the Warren Group, do you really think I'd need to go through the trouble of courtship?" I froze. "That report is standard procedure from Fortis Investment," he continued. "I left it out on purpose. I didn't hide it." He reached out, his fingertips brushing lightly against my cheek. They were cool, yet somehow searing. "Because I had no intention of lying to you. Whether what I feel is real or not, time will prove it." Then he leaned in slightly, his breath brushing my skin, his sharp gaze locking onto mine like a predator cornering its prey. But now that you know all this, I want to see whether you still dare to stand by my side." His eyes were filled with dominance, challenge, testing my courage, my bottom line, testing whether he could push me away or force me to face the truth in my own heart. I met his intense stare head-on, my heart pounding violently in my chest. It wasn't fear that rose inside me, it was a fire, a stubborn, defiant flame refusing to be subdued. Since when had I, Sierra Warren, ever been afraid of anything? I curved my lips into a smile, almost provocative. "Julian Ford, do you think you're the only one doing the evaluating here? On my side, your probation period isn't over yet either." A flicker of surprise passed through his eyes, then it deepened into something darker, richer. Admiration, amusement, and an unmistakable sense of possessive determination. "Good," he murmured. Then he lowered his head and claimed my lips with a kiss. Unyielding, commanding, yet carrying a rough, almost savage tenderness. Outside the window, the city lights exploded like a river of stars. In that moment, I knew our battle had only just begun. This game would be thrilling, and it would only end with death or victory. That kiss felt like a silent declaration of war, and like a lightning bolt tearing through fog. Julian no longer hid his ambition or his methods, and I, too, tore apart the last layer of obedient disguise. Between us, a delicate and dangerous balance formed. We were intimate partners and wary rivals. He took me to the top-floor office of the Fortis headquarters. Through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, the entire city stretched out beneath our feet. He pointed to the web of streets below, his tone calm but ringing with certainty. "See that? Fortis's new landmark will rise here soon." I stood by the window with a coffee cup in hand and met his gaze without backing down. What coincidence. The Warren Group just secured the plot right next to it. I've seen the planning draft. It has a better view. He raised an eyebrow, then let out a low laugh as he walked over and wrapped an arm around my waist, his breath brushing my ear. "Then why not collaborate? A powerhouse alliance. Maximum profit." I turned my head slightly, avoiding his overly hot breath. "We can consider it, but Warren stays in the lead." "Greedy," he chuckled, gently squeezing my fingertips, yet his tone was indulgent. We began truly involving ourselves in each other's work. He didn't hesitate to let me join Fortis's core project meetings, and I would throw some of the Warren Group's trickiest issues his way. At the negotiation table, we went head-to-head. In private, we were perfectly in sync. This mix of rivalry and alliance, sharp yet intimate, was exhilarating. Under his pressure and challenges, I felt myself growing at remarkable speed, and he seemed to enjoy it, appreciating every counterattack and breakthrough I made. The outside world viewed us as the strongest, most stable partnership, the golden couple. Only we knew how turbulent the waters beneath that calm surface were. Until that day. The overseas mining investment my father had overseen years ago finally had an incident. When the news came, I was on Julian's private jet with him, heading to Europe for a renewable energy site inspection. My secretary called, her voice filled with unprecedented panic. "Miss Warren, something happened. The mining site in Alvarez, there's been a massive collapse. Casualties unknown. The local government has stepped in. The situation is chaotic. The media is exploding with reports." My heart plunged. That project, I knew its scale. A massive investment, something my father had pushed through with great effort. The risks had always been there. I just never expected them to erupt now. I forced myself to stay calm. Activate the emergency protocol. Contact the embassy. Assemble the best rescue team immediately, no matter the cost. Public relations needs to release a statement at once. Be sincere. Be humble. I fired off instructions one after another. But deep down, I already knew a major safety incident involving casualties like this, if mishandled, was enough to shake the foundation the Warren Group had built over decades. I hung up the call. The cabin fell into silence. Julian Ford sat across from me, holding a financial newspaper, appearing as though the phone conversation had nothing to do with him. But I noticed the faint tension in the fingertips resting against the edge of the page. "Need help?" he asked, setting the newspaper aside and lifting his gaze to me. His expression was deep, emotion unrateable. I drew in a long breath and looked at the swirling sea of clouds outside the window. In that moment, I remembered the handwritten note from his study. "When the timing is right, intervention possible." Was the timing now? Would he extend a hand? Or strike when we were already on the ground? His information network had always been sharp, and he rarely missed anything. I didn't answer his question directly. Instead, I asked, "What do you think of the situation?" He stood up and moved to the seat beside me. His presence enveloped me instantly. "Before the cause is confirmed, everything is speculation," he said calmly. "But the market and public opinion won't wait for the truth. Right now, the Warren Group's priority is stabilizing the stock price, silencing short sellers, and mitigating any political leverage that may arise." His analysis was precise, cold, cutting straight to the core. So I turned to face him directly, refusing to miss even the smallest flicker of emotion on his face. He met my scrutinizing gaze and unexpectedly smiled, a mix of helplessness and the faintest irritation at being doubted. "So," he repeated, then reached out and ruffled my hair firmly, an intimate gesture that broke through my taut nerves. "We're turning around and heading to Alvarez." I froze. "Julian, I've invested in several infrastructure projects there," he said, already pulling out a satellite phone, his tone shifting back into calculated command. "I have connections with several key power holders." He began dialing. "I can mobilize rescue teams and heavy equipment at the fastest speed. As for the media and short sellers," he paused, looking at me, his gaze sharp as a blade, yet carrying a steady strength, "leave them to me." 3 words, heavy as an army. I watched him work, calling Alvarez officials in fluent French, issuing rapid-fire instructions in English to Fortis's capital teams. His decisiveness was overwhelming, his efficiency startling. In that moment, the doubts and calculations that had been swirling in my mind vanished like smoke. In the face of a real storm, all those tests and speculations felt laughably small. He wasn't waiting for a chance to exploit the Warren Group. He was building a shield around me, around us, using the most formidable means at his disposal. The aircraft banked at 10,000 meters, redirecting toward a distant foreign land. I leaned back in my seat and watched his focused side profile. Then, for the first time, I reached out on my own and laid my hand over his on the armrest. His hand froze mid-call. He turned to look at me. I didn't say a word. I simply wrapped my fingers around his. He closed his hand over mine firmly, warm, steady, strong. "Get some rest," he said softly, in a tone that brooked no argument. "I'll wake you when we arrive." I closed my eyes, feeling the hum of the engines and the warmth of his palm. I knew the road ahead would be full of thorns and turbulent waves, but this time, I wasn't alone. The situation in Alvarez was far worse than expected. The mining site was deep in a remote mountain area, with access roads blocked by landslides. Rescue was extremely difficult. The local government was inefficient, and there were hints they intended to exploit the situation for leverage. International media swarmed in, cameras and long lenses pointed at the disaster site. Every detail was magnified endlessly. When we arrived at the temporary command center, the scene was utter chaos. Executives the Warren Group had dispatched were so stressed their lips were blistering. When they saw me, it was as if they'd seen salvation. Then they noticed Julian Ford beside me, and were so shocked they couldn't speak. Julian didn't waste time on greetings. He took command directly. The professional team he brought quickly integrated with the local rescue forces. Heavy machinery, coordinated through military transport channels he had access to, was airlifted by helicopters straight into the core zone. He personally spoke with several of Alvarez's highest-ranking generals, his tone calm, never groveling, yet carrying an invisible pressure. Within minutes, he secured top-priority access permissions along with armed escorts. "Anything money can solve," he said into the satellite phone, voice hard and cold, "isn't a real problem. What I want is efficiency. The fastest possible efficiency. Fortis will cover all losses." I watched him standing tall amid dust and smoke, watched him issue clear, decisive orders that slowly brought order back to the chaos. Something hard inside me quietly melted. At the same time, the public opinion battle in the States had already been arranged by him. Fortis Group released a statement immediately, announcing unconditional support for the Warren Group and fronting all rescue and compensation costs. Major media outlets under Fortis subtly shifted their reporting tone, from blame to highlighting the humanitarian efforts of the rescue operation. The few capital groups that tried shorting the Warren stock were ambushed by an unidentified force, clean, precise, brutal. They suffered devastating losses. Julian didn't just block the bullets for me, he cleared the battlefield. 3 days later, the rescue operation achieved a breakthrough. Most of the trapped miners were successfully saved, and casualties were kept to a minimum. Standing at the temporary press platform, I apologized to the public on behalf of the Warren Group and announced detailed compensation and reform plans. Julian stood a short distance away, not speaking, but his presence alone served as the strongest endorsement. Flashbulbs erupted around us. A reporter suddenly asked sharply, "Mr. Ford, given Fortis's full support for the Warren Group, does this indicate a potential merger between your companies?" Julian stepped forward, took the microphone, and swept his gaze across the crowd before responding steadily. "Fortis and the Warren Group are strategic partners and allies who share honor and hardship. Supporting the Warren Group is an act of commercial responsibility and also based on." He paused, turning his head slightly to look at me, his gaze deep and steady. "My absolute trust and support for Miss Sierra Warren." He didn't mention feelings, he didn't mention marriage, but absolute trust and support carried more weight than any love confession. The audience erupted, shock first, then thunderous applause. I knew then the Warren Group's crisis had passed. And after this ordeal, the alliance between the Ford and Warren families became unbreakable. When we returned home, life seemed to slip back into calm. Yet something fundamental had changed. The invisible barrier between Julian and me had disappeared. We still clashed in business, but it was no longer guarded hostility. It had transformed into a different form of tacit understanding and cooperation. We could argue heatedly over a merger case, then spend late-night hours in the study going through financial reports and discussing ideas. He was no longer the distant, calculating ruler of the corporate world. He would tease me when I burned an entire pot of soup, and he would forcibly take away my laptop when I worked too late, carrying me back to the bedroom without discussion. And I, in turn, would complain about him while feeding him hangover soup after he came home drunk from business dinners, massaging his temples as he winced. When he ran into a difficult problem, I never hesitated to point out the flaws in his strategy and offer my own solutions. We were like two sharply edged puzzle pieces. The more we collided and the more perfectly we seemed to fit. My father's attitude toward Julian gradually shifted from polite observation to genuine approval. My mother, meanwhile, quietly took my hand and said, "Sierra, Mom can tell, Julian truly cares about you." Truly? I thought he did. That care woven into everyday moments, that unwavering protection, that trust built through fighting side by side. None of that could be faked. Until one day, I received an anonymous package. Inside was a stack of photos and a USB drive. The photos showed Evan Carter. He was sitting in a wheelchair. The background was a foreign rehabilitation center. He looked frail and thin, his eyes empty and lifeless, completely different from the confident boy I once knew. The USB drive held only one audio clip. Julian's voice, cold, without a trace of emotion, giving an order to his subordinates, "Clean it up. Make sure he never appears in Sierra's sight again. As for the Carter family, finish them." I sat in the study with the USB drive in my hand for a long time. I knew exactly what the sender wanted, to plant a thorn between Julian and me, to make me fear him, distrust him, leave him. I did feel a chill. Julian's methods were far more ruthless than I had imagined. But strangely, I didn't feel fear, nor disgust. The Carters, Evan. They were rot I had already carved out of my life. I did not pity their fate. And Julian, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. "Where are you?" I asked. "Just finished a meeting at the office. What's wrong?" His voice sharpened instantly, noticing something off. "I received something about Evan." There was silence for 2 seconds. Then his tone dropped, cool and lethal. "I'm coming back." Julian returned quickly, bringing a chill from outside with him. He entered the study, and the moment his eyes landed on the photos and the USB, his expression turned razor-sharp. "Who sent this?" he asked, his voice tight with barely contained anger. "Not important?" I looked up at him. "I just want to know, was the audio real?" He didn't avoid the question. He met my gaze directly. "Yes." "Why?" He walked toward me and knelt on one knee, aligning his eyes with mine. He took my cold hands in his. Because he shouldn't have harassed you again and again. He crossed my bottom line. His tone was steady but brutally honest. And because the humiliation he once gave you deserves a price. And that price. He brushed his fingers gently across my cheek, warm against my skin. In my opinion, still isn't enough. Sierra, he said softly, I'm not a good person. My world is like this, survival of the fittest, cutting the weeds at the root. I solve problems with the most direct, most effective method. Removing obstacles. If you think my methods are cruel, if you can't accept it. He paused, his expression dark and deep as the sea. I can change, but I'll need time. I looked into his eyes. There was no deception there, no mask, only pure honesty, even a trace of unease. He was showing me his most unvarnished self. Maybe even the part he thought least worthy. He was gambling, betting that I could accept all of him. I suddenly smiled. I lifted my hand and tossed the USB drive into the shredder beside me. After a soft whirring sound, it turned into dust. No need to change, I said lightly. This version is fine. He froze. Julian Ford, what do you think I like? I leaned in until our noses almost touched. The polite gentleman at cocktail parties. The unbeatable negotiator at the boardroom table. My voice softened, yet sharpened all at once. I like all of you. Your dominance, your methods, your fierce protectiveness, as long as the tip of your blade never points at me. His pupils contracted, followed by a surge of unrestrained relief and joy. He pulled me into his arms so tightly I almost lost my breath. Never, he whispered hoarsely against my ear. Sierra Warren, you are my only weakness, and my only armor. A year later, the Skyline Halo, the world's tallest skyscraper jointly developed by Ford Global and the Warren Group, was officially completed. On the top-floor observatory deck, a private engagement reception was underway. No media, only our closest family and friends. I wore a star-lit gown custom-made for me by a French designer, standing before the massive floor-to-ceiling windows and looking down at the city glowing beneath us. This was the place where he once pointed and told me the new Ford landmark would rise. Now we were standing here together. Julian wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin gently on the top of my head. Do you remember what you said the first time you came here? He asked softly. I remember, I laughed. I said the Warren plot next door had a better view. And now? I turned and looped my arms around his neck, meeting the starlight reflected in his eyes. Now this place is the best, because you're here. He lowered his head and kissed me. Behind us, family and friends cheered and clapped. Beyond the glass, thousands of lights shimmered, a city giving us its blessing. I once thought love was compromise, was restraint, was losing myself. Until Julian showed me that real love is equality, two forces meeting head-on. It's growing together, becoming better together, being utterly yourself, and being wholly accepted. We are not each other's appendage. We are partners. We are equals. We are sovereigns walking side by side. As the engagement banquet drew to an end, Julian held my hand and led me to the edge of the terrace. The night breeze brushed against our faces, carrying the warmth of early summer. He pulled out a velvet ring box as if by magic. Inside wasn't a traditional diamond ring, but a uniquely designed band, platinum set with a rare black diamond encircled by tiny white ones like night meeting starlight. Mysterious, brilliant. Sierra Warren, he said, looking at me with unwavering intensity. His voice was steady, carried by the wind. I won't ask whether you want to marry me. He paused. I'm asking whether you'll take this world with me and every star and ocean in the years to come. I looked at him, this powerful, domineering man who somehow gave all his gentleness only to me. My eyes warmed and my heart filled with something vast and bright. I lifted my hand, smiling with every ounce of radiance inside me. Yes. The end.